Hi everyone, I'm Kloo. Welcome to my new project. So today I'm going to be starting quite a large Minecraft map. So I'm not a huge fan of survival. I rather sit back, build stuff, create something to enjoy. That's what we're going to do. So I've mapped out the entire area. If you take a look, you can sort of make out the boundary. Just a bedstone wall for now. I will end up doing something with it one day, but till then, it's a very expansive map. And this is actually where we are right now. And this is going to be one of many hubs. And it's going to house everything I need to turn Minecraft into an RPG. Right, so here we are inside the tower. This is where I've hidden a lot of my useful mechanics. So each of them is generally a different feature, and I'm keeping track of them by using these signs. So first off, we'll take a look at this chain. So this is for the game rule setup. So if I just pop them all in chat quickly, we can briefly go over them. A lot of the longer commands I won't go into much detail about, but I will put them in chat in case anyone wants to sort of tinker with them. So right now we've got a few game rule ones and some boss bar ones. So these are just the game rules that I want to make sure are set the way I want. So false for command block output. We have a lot of mechanics running in the background that we don't want flooding chat. Mob griefing is false because we don't want any mobs to be able to mess around with everything we're building. Universal anger and forgive dead players is true and false respectively. So that means any of the mobs I set up will retain their anger no matter what happens to the player. As for the boss bar stuff, we'll probably get to that in a later episode. So here we've got a force load command. What this does is ensure that the chunks in the area are loaded. We take a look outside quickly. So this tower sits in the middle of 4 different chunks. And essentially that command just makes sure that no matter where any player is, this place is always loaded and always functional. These two are a bit more complicated, and this one's the RPG element. So we'll talk about these briefly. So this one's called item TP mag. Corresponding, I have an item in my inventory called mag. So if I throw it on the ground, we end out right in front of the tower. The way this works is it checks to see if the item is on the ground. If it is, it teleports the player, and then it deletes the item. That's the command in chat for anyone who's interested. So these are a starting point for the RPG elements I want to include. So right now I have this item called Visage of Frailty. If we put this in this item frame, we see in chat Lingering Curse Frailty. There appears to be a cursed object nearby. And if we look in our inventory, we have weakness. We need an empty hand. Take it out, weakness goes away. So what that will allow me to do is out in the open world, I can set up these item frames with different items and have that area have a certain effect. So if you travel to, say, the mesa over there, you come across an item with hunger, I can give the player hunger within that area. And then it's also a way for the player to interact with the map because they can then go and destroy the item. Right, so if we take a look at the commands, we'll just briefly go over them. So what I'm using is an if statement. So it's testing to see if there's an item frame out in the open world in a chunk that's loaded, and if it has the correct item within it. So in this case, visage of whatever I choose to name it. And if it does, it will run the weather clear command. So this comparator then checks if this is running a command, and if it is, it turns on, providing 1 pulse to this command block. And this command block then tells text, which was this little pop-up, if I can find it. So Lingering Curse Frailty. So that will be an indicator to the player if they enter an area that right now there is, say, a curse upon them. As for this one, it's simply just the effect. So this will run repeatedly as long as this command block is running. So as long as they're in that area, the weather is being cleared, and they are suffering from the effect. So these all do different things. We'll leave them a bit hidden for now, but it is a very useful mechanic that I hope to incorporate in different ways, not just that. So for instance, I could have trophies set up. So if a player gets a certain trophy and puts it somewhere in the world, they get a permanent buff. Or I can tie it to equipment. So if they equip certain items, certain things happen. All these things we'll touch on in later episodes as I make use of more of the mechanics and of course build them. So I do also want to incorporate things like random events, probably on the daytime cycle, as well as more environmental factors. So like traps with mob spawn or special mobs out in the open world, different things to sort of find and make it more enjoyable to explore and experience this map as a whole. Other than that, we'll probably hop into my test world and I'll go over a couple more mechanics. Right, so here we are in my test world. So first off, these are the dungeons. So I'm going to have these out in the world for people to find. And when you find them, you just click the button and in chat, you get this message. I'll probably end up swapping them so that it has the title of the dungeon, and then in the little hover text, it'll say, click to enter, because that's what it does. So it's a bit more informative. So if we click on it, we get teleported into the dungeon. So you have the dungeon to explore, some more rooms with a button to indicate the bosses. But other than that, if we take a look in chat, you can see a couple things. First, as soon as I entered, it said hi, and now it's sort of counting, but we'll get to that in a bit. So first off, the hi. So what I'm doing is I'm checking to see if the player is inside or outside. So if they're inside, I can run everything to set up the dungeon, and if they leave, I can have everything removed. So it's just a way to keep it clean and make sure it's isolated to the area. Other than that, this is the number generation. So essentially what these are coin flips. So the way they work is I use a dropper and a hopper. So if we lock the hopper, we can see. So I use a stone, which stacks to 64, and therefore gives a weaker signal to trigger one side. We swap it over to the sword. It now triggers the other side, because of course the sword doesn't stack, so it gives a much stronger output. I'm sure there's simpler ways to build this, or a simpler way to make an RNG machine, but this is what I've come up with and what I'll be using. I'm not that great at redstone. I kind of just force my way through a lot of things and figure it out as I go. But I think I've come up with everything I need for the map I want to make. If we take a look at this big one, this is very similar, except it has a second function that only runs if a requirement is met. So, in most cases, it will only generate between 1 and 4, but if a certain requirement is met, it can generate between 1 and 8. And what this will allow me to do is I can incorporate a hard mode. So for instance, if a player has a certain item in their inventory, it will now trigger between 1 and 8, allowing me to diversify the boss and give it more mechanics. There is a villager wandering around, a wandering trader that I've sort of tinkered with. Now you can notice in green, there's some text as well as enchant books, but the text is more important. So this is another mechanic I intend to incorporate, and using the lore slot of an item. So usually you can't edit this slot. Your slot can only be edited through commands, and what it enables me to do is using another parameter of testing. I can find the correct one, that is. I assume it's one of these. So I think it's this one. The chat is very messy, but if you make out this line here, so at random, NBT data, inventory, and then tag, lore, and then here we're looking for this. So if I have an item in my inventory with that lore tag, ranger, this will actually work. And all of a sudden I have a potion effect. Now this might seem very mundane at the moment, but this is just another layer I'm adding. So I can tinker with this, I can have all different effects. I can summon wolves, I can have lightning strike, I can turn you invisible. I can just add all different customizability to items. So you can find out in a dungeon all these different items with different tags, and each of these tags are going to do something. Similarly, Minecraft does have another useful manipulator, which is the attribute system. Though limited, the attribute system does allow for the creation of progression. So I can tinker with health, damage, speed, armor, toughness, knockback, if any of them have it. Not quite. Knockback resistance. So I can edit all those as well and make a linear progression system that then becomes a bit diverse through the lore tags. Other than that, there's a lot of other things I've sort of tinkered with and developed, which we'll probably get to in later episodes when I actually put them to use. Right, I hope you enjoyed the brief intro. As for recording and just general progress, I hope that I can sort of stick to one episode a week. It depends obviously on what time permits for myself, as this is a very large project and building it is definitely going to take a while. I think episode wise, we'll probably just try to show off mechanics. It will get very repetitive building the same things over and over again. So we'll probably keep it to something new every episode just to sort of explain what I'm doing. As for building, I'll probably end up using time lapses. I also hope that I can sort of get some tips or tricks or things you guys want to see and sort of cater both my building and the episodes towards that, because there are lots of things that do need refinement, and I hope to learn a few things as we go along this journey. But other than that, I think we'll leave this little intro episode there for now. So I do hope you enjoyed, found something interesting, and look forward to the future ones. It should be fun being able to film my progress. I've actually had this idea for about 7 years now. I started in 2015, but the game's come a long way and a lot of it's been outdated or changed or removed. So I've had to continuously come up with new ideas, and I'm really hoping that the future updates don't ruin it. I think we're at a point in the game where this side of things is very stable and they're really just adding content, not really much for map makers so much anymore. Like, there's very useful things, especially redstone, but with the whole command changes, I think we're at a very stable point where I feel this project is more feasible given the amount of time I have to invest into it to actually finish it. I also hope that YouTube serves as a way to keep me motivated to actually get quite far this time around. I think I have about 30 dungeons planned so far. On one of my previous builds, I think I ended up making about 5 and ended up not losing interest but not really having the time. So I'm hoping YouTube is a way to keep me motivated to continue working on it. But other than that, I really hope you enjoyed. And of course, thanks for watching. See ya.